Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's proceed with session 1. Moderating this session is Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar. And we have our esteemed panelists, Yang Berbahagia Dato' Abdul Rashid Ghaffur, Deputy Governor Bank Negara Malaysia, Mr. Hang Yan Hugandun, CFSO, Qatar Financial Center, QFC Authority, Mr. Ahmad Shariman Muhammad Sharif, CEO, CIMB Islamic, and Bapa Arif Hartawan, Executive Director, Sharia Economics and Finance Bank, Indonesia. And last but not least, Mr. Hani Salim Sombol, CEO, ITFC, Officer in charge CEO, ICD, joining us virtually. Gentlemen, فَتَفَضَّل. The topic for this session is mapping a more resilient and efficient Islamic finance. Tan Sri, 1 hour 15 minutes. Can we have the mic, please? Mic, please. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala an-nabiyyil aminil Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Amma ba'd. May I welcome everyone to our first panel discussion on the very first day of Kliff 2022. I have all the pleasure to welcome each and every panelist, esteemed panelists for this session. We look forward to having a very insightful, perhaps far-reaching ideas, ideals, perspective, and some takeaway from this session. Allow me to welcome and our speakers or panelists for today's session. We have on the stage Yang Berbahagia Dato' Abdul Rashid Ghaffur, Deputy Governor Bank Negara Malaysia, who has been very much in the leadership role for Central Bank for many years, who has many experiences, and who has been navigating finance in one way or another for many years for the Bank Negara Malaysia. We have also Mr. Heng Jeng Honggendom from Qatar. He is the Chief of Financial Sector Office, Qatar Financial Center in Qatar. And we have with us on the stage Bapa Arif Hartawan, Executive Director, Sharia Economics and Finance Bank Indonesia, a very leading thinker as well as a practitioner over there in Indonesia. We have Ahmad Shariman Muhammad Sharif, the CEO, CIMB Islamic Bank, and we have a recorded session by Engineer Hani Salim Sombol, the Officer in Charge, CEO of ICD. I would like to believe that this session will be very much interactive in nature, insightful in character. I would like to invite every one of them to give a opening speech and remark on the topics, which covers 6 important verticals in order to map a more resilient and efficient Islamic finance. Before I do that, I would like to give some mapping for the speakers themselves. I think 4 of them represent important hub and jurisdiction. We have one from our Bank Negara Malaysia, the other one from Qatar Financial Authority. We have Engineer Hani from ICD looking into helping the IDB to go for the financing mode for Islamic countries worldwide. And of course, we have Arif Hartawan from Bank of Indonesia to look into how do the regulators of the world drive the Islamic finance agenda. And we have on the other side of the coin one CEO representing the regulatory or the practitioner on the ground. We have also on the stage a good hybrid and combination of experiences in the East and in the West, and reflecting the most important hubs of the world, coming up very strongly, Indonesia in particular, to see and to add value to the whole landscape of Islamic finance globally. The topic is very much interesting and stimulating. I'm sure the speakers have their own inputs and insight to share with us. I would like to first start with Yang Berbahagia Datuk Abdul Rashid Ghaffur to present his ideas and insights on the whole topic of mapping a more resilient and efficient Islamic finance. Over to you, Datuk, within 8 to 10 minutes, if possible. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum, Tan Sri, respectable panelists, and also ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to be here today with the esteemed panelists. And this is certainly a remarkable event as we are able to gather here in person and face to face after more than 2 years into the pandemic. Alhamdulillah, with the upliftment of the movement restrictions and opening of borders, we are seeing stronger resumption of economic activities. Having said that, we are still not out of the woods yet. While Malaysia is on the firm recovery path, growth has been rather uneven. We have certain segments of the economy requiring a larger recovery, a longer recovery trajectory or recovery path. According to the World Bank study, let me just mention this, the pandemic has impacted income distribution of the B40 twice as large as the impact on the top 40% of the population. With many OIC countries, unfortunately, at the heart of these adverse implications. So this is something that's worth noting. And today's topic for the panel session, Tan Sri, mapping a more resilient and efficient Islamic finance is indeed very appropriate and timely, given the heightened call to close economic disparities and social vulnerabilities globally. For the Islamic finance fraternity, we are at the apex of driving this much-needed reform that is anchored on Sharia values. This is central to our panel discussion today, and I'm looking forward to share some insights on key measures undertaken by the central bank in setting the pathways towards building a more resilient and efficient Islamic finance industry. Perhaps, Tan Sri, I'll just spend the next 8 minutes or so to touch maybe on the first 2 questions regard to the challenges faced and also in terms of what are the game changers for Islamic finance. Before touching on the game changers, allow me to first highlight the global challenges and key trends amplified over the course of the pandemic. These challenges and key trends present a vast opportunity for Islamic finance in shaping the future of finance. First, global income inequality is growing, and it's further widening the social disparities. It has also led to widespread concerns on global food security, and this is affecting vulnerable households globally, with OIC countries experiencing a fair share of this impact. Then, if you look at the number of undernourished population globally, it increased by 25% within a year, from 2019 to 2020, and the majority actually comes from the OIC countries. Second challenges or key trend that we are observing is that investors and consumers now, their appetite in sustainable and ESG is more evident than ever before. If you look at in terms of the capital allocation, considerations have moved beyond traditional financial metrics, and this now include risks from climate-related exposures and impact of firms' activities on society itself. The third key trends or the third key challenges is the rapid uptake of the digital services. And this provides strong prospects for financial inclusion, as what mentioned by His Royal Highness this morning. If you look at the global Findex, for example, the Financial Inclusion Index, the average rate of account ownership in developing economies increased by 8 percentage points in 2021, from 63% to 71%. So this is a very impressive change that we have seen, arising from the digitalization. Therefore, the key questions or the game changer for us, Tan Sri, how can we be responsive to these challenges and key trends towards better securing the needs of the real economy and social well-being of the people? Premise on this, the Bank Negara Malaysia's Financial Sector Blueprint 2022-2026 places mainstreaming value-based finance as a strategic key thrust for development of the financial sector in the next 5 years. There are 3 key areas or enablers that we will be focusing on in this next 5 years. First, Tan Sri, is the diversity of Sharia contracts to drive innovation. Second, in terms of delivering impact-focused offerings, where the VBI and social finance will be a key priority for us. And third is digital transformation. Let's look at the first key enabler in terms of diversity of Sharia contracts. We do see very strong prospect indeed by leveraging on the diverse Sharia contracts in driving innovation in new lines of businesses, new lines of segments, as well as new lines of markets as well. The bank will continue to work with the industry and the relevant stakeholders to develop a more conducive regulatory environment to facilitate the application of diverse Sharia contracts. And this includes diversification of the investment account to mobilize new sources of funds for value-based financing, particularly on initiatives to develop impact-driven investment instrument. The second key enabler is to strengthen industry's capacity and practices to deliver impact-focused offerings, where mainstreaming social finance and value-based will be a key focus area. It is very encouraging to see Islamic financial institutions have made very steady progress in delivering the value-based finance solutions. And based on the latest IBIM VBI report, I'm pleased to share that the industry has intermediated about 33 billion USD in VBI-aligned initiatives, and more than 15 million US dollars has been distributed under the Islamic social finance category. Islamic financial institutions have also collaborated with key stakeholders and market experts to release the VBI Financing and Impact Assessment Framework, or the VBIAF, sectoral guides for a few economic sectors, in particular palm oil, renewable energy, oil and gas, and also in construction and infrastructure area as well. Performance of the beneficiaries, another key area is also in terms of what we have done in the social finance realm. I would like to mention in terms of the ITCAD program that's currently piloted by 4 Islamic banking institutions. Of course, ITCAD for international participants, it means I'm determined. So it's more in terms of changing one's livelihoods. It is a blended financing program that combines 3 important elements. First is in terms of the Islamic social finance instruments, either zakat, wakaf, or sadaqah. And we complement this with the low-cost microfinancing. And third, the most important element is in terms of this is complemented with the structured training and mentorship to help low-income micro-entrepreneurs to generate sustainable income. What we have seen is that the performance of the beneficiaries is tracked very closely by the participating institutions. And this is where we embed the sense of togetherness in terms of the partnership in this journey itself. We have also an element that's very important, we thought, it's about pay it forward. So this where features where successful participants can later on contribute back by creating jobs for the P40, for example, and also more importantly later on they become contributor to zakat itself, from recipient to contributor of zakat itself. And since inception in 2019, or in 2020 indeed, there's about 2.7 million ringgit has been disbursed to 180 participants, and this is on a pilot basis. And more than half of these participants have been able to save up to 2,000 ringgit per month, and they have most of them employ at the very least 3 employees. So this is the early success of the social finance initiative that we are taking. And building on this success, we envision Islamic financial institutions strengthening further their capabilities and developing innovative solutions. And on the part of the central bank, what we'll do, we'll prioritize on 2 areas. First is to support industry's innovation efforts in developing new value-based business models, new solutions, and also new practices. And also will facilitate greater stakeholder activism through higher quality disclosure. Let me move on to the third key enabler, that is to enable and optimize digital transformation. As we have seen, digitally savvy consumption trends offer enormous opportunities for Islamic finance to innovate solutions by leveraging on the diversity of Sharia contracts. And through adoption of big data and open API, we believe Islamic finance will be able to plug the remaining gaps to expand the outreach and also values. At Bank Negara Malaysia, we will continue to foster enabling environment by enhancing pathways for digital innovations to test, to learn, and also to exit. As you know, we have also recently announced the issuance of 5 digital banking licenses, 2 of which will be Sharia compliant services. We believe that these 3 key enablers are expected to catalyze changes within the industry in the next few years. And this is not, to me, I believe it's not an easy journey, but something that is not impossible for us to achieve. We are already seeing strong strides made by the industry players in realizing the financial sector blueprint's vision for Islamic finance. Perhaps, Tan Sri, I'll stop here and give ways to the other esteemed speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Bahagia Dato', for that enlightening presentation covering both macro and micro perspective. I'm sure that the central bank has been working very hard to understand the heartbeat of the nation as well as the financial sector of the nation, and surely we can have more interactive, if the time permit, with Deputy Governor, our Deputy Governor, understanding when can we see the result of this transformation agenda and the VBI and what have you, because everyone is very anxious to see the impacts of this kind of new initiative, and what are the roles of all Islamic banks and intermediaries in Malaysia to support this high quality of vision set up by the Central Bank of Malaysia. I think we stop at that juncture for a while. Let me move to the next speaker. I will skip Ahmad Shariman first. Let me go to the boss first, regulator first. Okay. Can I take the opportunity to invite Heng to deliver his presentation on his outlook and insights of the market, and how does Islamic finance, perhaps from Qatari perspective, to talk and to drive the agenda of creating a resilient and efficient Islamic finance in Qatar and in the region. Heng, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Salam alaikum. Thank you for being here. It's great that Malaysia has opened up, so we have a full audience here next to, I think, 400 people online. Yeah, it's a great honor to be here, being a small country, but a very ambitious country from the Gulf. Listening to the keynote speakers this morning, for us, the key takeaways are 2 elements, which is to focus on sustainability, ESG, and technology, which is fintech, because those 2 elements will help, I would say, unlock the potential of those people and SMEs, etc., that are unbanked. And I think that is a key element of Islamic finance to make this financial inclusion. And if I look at let's say the Gulf region, where there's a lot of luck because of the hydrocarbon reserves, and at the current prices, the future economic outlook for those regions is fantastic. But that comes with a responsibility as well. So if I speak for Qatar, I can see more of a focus on Islamic finance. During the COVID period, the central bank has facilitated a merger of a few banks. So now we have two new Islamic banks, the Dukhan Bank and Masraf Al Rayan, very large institutions, bringing basically the Islamic finance in the country up to, let's say, 40% of the total. And remember, we have Qatar National Bank, which is the largest bank of the Middle East. So the country is very much focused on Islamic, so I expect also more sukuks coming out of the government and out of the banking sector. There are definitely areas that we need to develop, and that's not only for Qatar, but I would say it's for all of the GCC countries, and that is make sure that the inclusiveness of the workers that have contributed a lot to building our nations, that we find solutions for them as well. And this is not only about remittance of money back home, where fintech can play an important role, but also make sure that people are insured, have access to care, and basically the opportunity to save and possibly invest. Because the key element that I see in the technology, and perhaps later we will talk more about fintech, so the technology has the opportunity to democratize everything. So specifically, when I think for Islamic finance, very important, zakat and donation becomes easier and trackable, but also people that would like to invest and otherwise would not have access to very interesting sukuk opportunities. With all these fintech companies, you can democratize investments into smaller parts, make accessible for a larger audience. And another element that I see being an ex-banker is that traditionally, and it's probably the same in these markets here, is that SMEs, also in the Middle East, are generally ignored and have difficulty in access to funding because the focus is on the big conglomerates and the qualified investors. And artificial intelligence, together with some other criteria, will make it easier to have a proper risk assessment of the SMEs and hopefully resulting into more access to funding. And the other element is that not necessarily only the banks need to provide that funding, but that could be a combination of crowdfunding or creating specific funds or capital market issuances to help that segment. So the reason why I'm here and I'm staying a few more days than Kliff is also to learn from what's happening in this market. Clearly, Malaysia is a leader when it comes to having developed a very deep Islamic capital markets. Indonesia as well. So those are markets that in the Middle East we can learn from, and that is also, I think, an opportunity for Malaysia and Indonesia to leverage that knowledge and reach out to the countries in the Middle East. So try to convince the CEOs here to set up rep offices in the Middle East. Because I think we can definitely learn. Malaysia and Indonesia have developed their ecosystems over the last decades, and the Middle Eastern countries would like to catch up, but this is not something you can do in 2 years' time. So we definitely need your help. And the other element is that as a banker, we've always struggled with regulators, but the fact that Malaysia and also I think the regulators in Indonesia, they are very responsible, have developed a set of rules together with the banking sector to make sure that financing becomes more inclusive, using Islamic finance as a tool, and that is important. A strong, I would never have thought that I would say this, but a strong regulator, a visionary regulator, will help the sector. Because out of research that we will discuss later on Islamic fintech, it shows that if you have a strong regulator facilitating these innovation, the fintech sector as a whole will benefit. So in summary, basically sustainability and technology will drive basically the banking sector, create more access to those segments that were unbanked. So I see a great future. Well, as Roy Hines said it already, the wind is blowing east, and I hope that the very rich countries from the GCC, including Qatar, will invest more into the east than in the west, because traditionally they always invested in the west. And I think it's time to develop the close relationship with Malaysia. And the fact that our deputy prime minister was here 2 days ago, I think is a good sign that Qatar is at least very serious to build up that relationship with Malaysia. I think I leave it at that. And
thank you. Thank you, Hank, for that very honest and very straight to the point. What are you trying to do in Qatar in terms of bringing the SDG into the very fabric of the society? You touched about the foreign workers or the laborers in particular. How could we make ESG applicable to them? Accounts, insurance, protection. I'm based in Dubai as well. I've seen how the government of Dubai, for example, has created the mobile banks into the labor camp every single weekend of the week. And nowadays with technology, we can do that better. And perhaps when it comes to SDG, we believe in inclusiveness, and that includes both citizens and laborers and foreign workers as well. So it's a good thing to ponder upon, and we can go beyond that into some other aspects. But I wish you have brought with you some free tickets for World Cup 2022, in particular for me. Okay, but we can talk about that later when we have dinner tonight. So we hope that we can use the World Cup, opportunity to demonstrate the Islamic finance on our behalf to the whole world.
Everybody's welcome, and if you set up your bank, then I'll make sure you get tickets.
Okay, very smart answer. Thank you. Okay, we move on to Bapak Arif Hartawan, very much thoughtful leader in the area. Bapak, I think the floor is yours to share, your own. What do you wish to see when coming to 6 vertical of creating a more resilient and efficient system?
Thank you, moderator. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's my honor, organizer inviting Bank Indonesia. This is my first time also join in this seminars. Honestly, I'm like a mu'alaf, Pak, because just joined with the Syariah Economic and Finance Department in Bank Indonesia just few months ago. So this is the first time also for me, but at least in this opportunity, we would like to learn from Malaysia, the leader in this Sharia economy and finance, and from others speakers. First, in this first session, I would like to just respond to the 2 critical questions about the game changers and then the challenges that we face. Pandemic have a barakah at the other side, right? We learned that because of the lockdown, people cannot go anywhere, so there is time for accelerating in the digitalization. So it happens also in Indonesia. Many Indonesians have a smartphone in their hand, so they can use it for transaction. So digitalization become the game changer, I think. And then looking forward, Bank Indonesia also put more attention on that, how we develop in the area of fast payment. So we have the BI Fast, QRIS, QR Indonesia Standard, which is applied also for the Syariah business. The other thing is also what we learned from the game changer is that the function of the social finance in Islamic, because in case of Indonesia, because of the pandemic, so many households with the lower and poor household, they cannot get enough salary, and then even they don't have any job for do. So the government providing the social financing for them. So the optimizing the social like zakat, infak, sodako, wakaf, even more productive ways, using the digitalization is more become popular now in Indonesia. So the digitalization not only for doing the transaction business, but also for collecting the social finance. So this is very popular now, and many fintechs also include on those area of business. The other things which is also learned from the pandemic is the concern on the more healthy life. So people now understand that the halal meat and halal chicken is more better than others because it's toyib and clean and healthy. So halal lifestyles now become more popular in Indonesia. Even though majority of Indonesia, 90% almost, is Muslim, but the concern on the halal things is still very limited. Now, because of pandemic, people now become more concerned, and then we push forward on the how the small medium enterprises dealing with the food industries, they get halal certificate from the government. So this is something that we believe by increasing the demands for goods, and indirectly will also increase the demand for services, especially for the Islamic banking services. So that's why the strategy that we focus on by the central bank, how we can increase the demand for using the halal food, and then the next is the services in Sharia banking. That's why what we call in every occasion, our governor mentioned how we can increase the passengers, where we already preparing the bus, but there is no passengers inside. So how can we increase the passengers coming to the bus and then using this facility? That's why we also focusing on many actors. Indonesia have 30,000 Islamic boarding school. We call it pesantren in Indonesia. So on those Islamic boarding school, we say to them, we learn fikih, ngaji fikih in bahasanya, learn fikih in pesantren, but central bank teach them how to be rich. So ngaji fikih and ngaji sugih in Java language. We learn them, we teach them how to be rich. While they have money, they can transact in the economy. So that's why very important to increase the number of passengers by increasing the demand. And then we believe demand will create the supply, right? So it took time, but we believe in 5 years or 10 years will have the significant impact. So that's the thing that we do, not only with the Islamic boarding school, which is we have 30,000 around Indonesia, all over Indonesia, but also we work with the community. Last week we just doing empowering the women, small medium enterprises. So we work with the power of women, yeah, in stimulate the economy. So we focus also with the community base. Yeah. So people in Indonesia like a unique way, so we have to have a different way to treat them. And also with the association of mosques, because we also think that mosques should be the center of the awakening of the economy of Ummah. So something that we do many ways in order to increase the demand, the passengers. This is something that we do lately. And the other things is about the challenges, moderator. I think that the challenges is quite important after the post-pandemic. We see many business is not fully recovery. So how can we, passing the transition period, yeah, how long you will, give the relaxation, the restructuring of the credit, and then how you do some support for them to make, their recovery successfully. So the challenges after the pandemic, I think, is how can we make the transition period smoothly. I stop at that side and then I will explore later on. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you, Bapak Arif Hartawan, for that important update from Indonesia. I think Indonesia has done a lot. I think recently they have merged 3 different Syariah banks into one called Bank Syariah National, Bank Syariah Indonesia, BSI, now moving to Dubai, DIFC, and they wanted to be top 5, top 10 Islamic banks of the world. So this is the dream of the Indonesian Islamic banks, merging 3, becoming one, and that one is competing at global level. And before that, we are following the corporate investment world, the Bukalapak IPO, where the Bukalapak company has been able to cut down all the intermediaries in the supply chain that make the end product price at the small shop in Indonesia, rural areas, cheaper very much, because they managed to cut down the margin all the way from the supplier to the end user. This is something that we can learn from that interesting idea, and how could Islamic banking and finance be part of the whole value chain moving forward. So perhaps there are many more interesting good news from Indonesia, because they have the scalability, they have resources, they have the demand and supply. So 1% Indonesia means a lot. This is something that we need to take cognizance of, inshallah, in the future. Let me move on now to Ahmad Syariman to share your perspective. Ahmad Syariman on the topics, and again, you have 8 to 10 minutes to share with all the audience.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum, and good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I think I'll begin my introduction by sharing with everyone here the calendar of the team at CIMB Islamic over the last 2 weeks, right? I have had, over the last 2 weeks, I have had people going to the Ulu Muda Forest, our staff checking out, working with WWF, looking at the works that we have done there. I personally went up to Fraser's Hill to also work on another project to actually conserve the area. We have a team that went to a state to visit on the IT card, to get rolling out the IT card. We had 10 volunteers mentoring Asnaf, try to be better entrepreneurs and whatnot. And this weekend we're going to go to a local university, trying to launching our another program, entrepreneurship program. And this is BAU. And why I'm starting it from this point is that from our perspective, from the Islamic Bank's perspective, this has become very integral part of our work. The people who are doing all this work, they are not dedicated CSR staff. They are normal banking staff of the bank. And what we have done, and what we're saying, increasingly, as we try to live up to the aspiration of the industry, as well as what's been highlighted by Datuk Digi just now, how do you do finance for all, and also how to deliver finance for sustainability. Increasingly, what we have come to realization is that not only do you need hybrid, what I call this, the normal way of delivering a solution no longer work. Increasingly, what we realize is that in order to deliver the desired impact of not just the regulators, but also of the community, and also the ideas of Islamic finance, we actually have to partner. The key here is hybrid delivery, right? What we have come across right now in trying to implementing all the desired outcomes is no longer sufficient for us to release the funds, right? Because take for example, releasing the funds for social purposes, to try to help entrepreneurs and whatnot. We need to identify the right entrepreneurs, right? Number 2, we need to make sure that the entrepreneurs are given proper guidance, right? And then when we disburse, we need to make sure that it's not misused. And then we need to create the network for them to actually continuously improve, and then help them to migrate. So when we do look at the programs that we are running, actually all those requires about, for each participant, for example in our program, will require about 8 to 10 extra man hours. So for the industry in particular, I personally do not think the financing is a problem. Actually, going forward, the real challenge is how we do effective delivery. Now, what I mentioned to you just now, one participant requires about 8 to 10 man hours, and that's my own personal estimation, in order to help a poor entrepreneur to become a successful entrepreneur or self-sufficient entrepreneur. That requires us to partner, right? Partner with organizations, partner with people with specialized knowledge. And I think I just want to touch something about what Bapak Arif mentioned earlier. I think in that regard, one thing that we see as actually a useful model is something that we see in Indonesia itself. Because one thing that Indonesia is very strong at is they have a lot of community-based organizations. They have the Muhammadiyah, they have the Pesantrens, they have Islamic hospitals, Islamic schools. So they have a lot of community-driven organizations, and those are useful partners to deliver the intended outcomes, right? Now, so that's just only on the social side. How about the environmental side? Take, for example, Malaysia, right? Malaysia, we lost about 28% of our, according to the WWF, we've lost about 28% of our forest cover from the year 2000 to now, right? But going forward, as part of our strategy to meet our international commitments with regards to carbon offsets and net zero emissions and whatnot, part of that strategy requires us to monetize the carbon offsets from Malaysian forests. That's also very technical work. We can provide the financing. The banks and the Islamic financial institutions can provide the financing. We can actually link up to the investors, but at the same time, we need technical partners who can work with us, can work with the state government to calculate what is the offset, how to distribute the offset. Now, redistribution is also very important, because when you want to make sure that these projects are all accepted, the forests are cultivated for economic purposes, right? You are basically, when you say do not cultivate the forest in order for the purpose of offset, there will be people displaced. There will be loss of income. How do we make sure that the income that we get from the offset is channeled to the right parties? So increasingly, I mean, going back to the topic, I'm going more on a practical perspective. I think in terms of challenges and game changes and how we can become more resilient, I think it's really about incorporating partnerships, hybrid delivery in how we operate.
Thank you very much, Mak Shariman, for that. I think it's not easy to be resilient. I mean, as much as we try to be resilient, of course, efficient, sometimes we need to make a very tough decision when we come across the junction and to cross the bridge. Then, only then we know that we are taking a very drastic and very difficult decision to make. And perhaps Shariman was trying to impress on all of us how important, as well how difficult and how challenging that decision would be when we wanted to be resilient in our own belief in promoting ESG and VBI and what have you. But there are many sides to the coin. We can have some discussion a bit later. But let us complete the panel discussion by displaying to you the recorded video by Engineer Hani Salim Sombul, the acting so-called CEO of ICD out of Jeddah in Saudi. Can we put the video on the frame, please?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Islamic Cooperations for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, I would like to extend my utmost appreciations to the organizers of this forum for the invite to this prestigious KLIFF 2022. Before I begin, please accept my sincere apologies for not being able to be physically in Kuala Lumpur due to prior commitment. Nevertheless, it is indeed an honor to be granted this unique opportunity to address all of you and to share with you some points of view that can be included in today's discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, while we are still reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical issues, we need to think proactively about ways of transforming pathways to better rebuild and perhaps reshape the world. In this regard, to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal we envision will require significant overhaul, which includes the realignment of the global economy and financial systems, as well as impactful investments focusing on serving the needs of inclusive, environmentally sustainable economic development. This is in fact the core of business of the Islamic finance. As an alternative type of funding, Islamic finance and its inherent characteristics lend themselves well to facilitate and promote sustainable development, such as the risk and share modes of financing that promotes assets on enterprises, the close link with the real economy, as well as activities that are aligned with the ESG theme and the overall global development agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, based on my experience working in this field for a long time, in addition also to the growing interest and increased consumers and investors' demand for Sharia compliant and ethical products worldwide, I believe the time is to ride and to capitalize on Islamic finance opportunities as to not be left behind. New growth segments such as Islamic fintech and digitization are becoming really boosters for the delivery of more potential impact of Islamic financial services by providing seamless, agile, and flexible solutions to existing and potential clients. For example, Islamic financial institutions can move toward building digital-only banking and capital markets to cater to the digital demographic, while artificial intelligence and big data analysis can be used for customer-based targeting. In addition, cross-border trade and financing can also facilitate through the P2B lending and trade finance. By driving solutions for SMEs and unbanked retail users, Islamic fintech is meant to address financial inclusion gap, which indeed will help narrow income inequalities and reduce poverty. Distinguished guests, what the pandemic has certainly taught us is that in this digitization age, where digital affinity is growing in all corners of the globe, there are plenty of opportunities for fintech concepts to be explored, and the Islamic finance industry must adapt to remain competitive, efficient, and inclusive. Despite the spotlight on fintech in recent years and its global impact of providing financial services, digital innovation in the Islamic financial services industry has been relatively low compared to its conventional counterparts. There has been a shortage of Sharia-compliant alternatives to meet the increased demand for wealth management, investment, insurance, and banking products that offers easier access, faster and more cost-effective delivery, and greater transparency. There is certainly big room for improvement, especially in identifying and scaling up fintech solutions for the Islamic finance industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I will end my thoughts with this. While we discuss ways in which we can enhance Islamic finance industry and how we can progress forward, it is also important to know that the basic foundations of a healthy, vibrant, and resilient Islamic finance industry is still a work in progress for many countries with growing Islamic finance aspirations. Industry players and other stakeholders must continue to stay focused on developing various capabilities and capacities in all aspects of Islamic finance ecosystem, and also offer support to ensure a successful takeoff. Therefore, I call upon strategic partners with market participants to collaborate with our 55 member countries on capacity building initiatives and further the internationalization of Islamic finance industry and facilitate more cross-border opportunities within untapped markets. Thank you once again for having me here today. All the best to all the participants of this session, and I wish everyone a fruitful, productive discussion. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, we have listened from Brother Engineer Hani. I think the keyword that I can take away from his short but powerful speech is the invitation by ICD for everyone to collaborate and to have a smart partnership with ICD. ICD is a very powerful agency based in Jeddah, looking into investment in OIC countries. And perhaps they need help, as we need their help as well to penetrate new market. And this is something we can, open up the discussion while working together to explore new market niches around the globe. I think we have heard so many keywords just now, from Datuk DG to Hang and Bapa Arif, Ahmad Shariman and Hani, from demand, from the inclusiveness, from the issue of mainstreaming, rethinking, financial utilization, smart partnership, and what have you. So I will put that keywords aside for a moment. Let us see the outcome from the Slido. What are the issues and questions coming from the floor that the speakers, our esteemed panelists, would be interested to tackle, if not all of them, most of them in the next 15-20 minutes or so. Perhaps you can see the top on the list on the issue of halal sector. How can Islamic finance support halal sector, which has been the cry of the industry for many, many decades, but not being solved as yet. So perhaps I would like to open the floor to esteemed panelists to comment briefly, 1 or 2 minutes on the first question. Datuk DG.
Thank you, Tasri. If I can start on the first question. I think it's interesting to note that I think I have here in terms of the report from the Global Islamic Economy Report 2022, which highlighted there's a very vast opportunity for halal trade. In terms of, you look at the global halal trade, is estimated about $2 trillion consumption value, coming from the massive 1.9 billion Muslim population globally. I think that's a very critical point there. Second is that I think in terms of from Malaysian market perspective, our financial institutions, I think they do have in terms of products offerings that's very diverse that cater to the need of the halal business industry. And this is very important because it covers the entire value chain of financing solutions. Apart from just the critical product regard to financing, what's more important in terms of the Sharia compliant supply chain finance, that's very critical. Second is in terms of the business matching services, and it is done via the networks and capacity development support from the institutions itself. And also one more important point is in terms of the certification. So that's where we have, in terms of industry regard to the certification, we have the halal certification and export readiness ratings. All this will actually supplement and support the halal trade moving forward. So beyond the financing, but there are also other areas that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Yes, please.
So Tasri, I think from a bank, from bank's perspective, quite a number of banks have also launched halal programs and so on. So we launched ours about 3-4 years ago, called Halal Biz Ready. And I think our approach was three-pronged, right? Number one was to give knowledge, i.e. we actually link up exporters and so on to actually halal knowledge providers, how to convert their operations, how to get the certification. Number two, if they are, once they get the knowledge and they want to convert, then we actually say, let's use financing. And we tap into various schemes, with government backed and so on. Halal-based financing for you to actually convert your operations. And the third step that we have done was actually to do business matching. So we actually, we're a member of a trade club alliance, and what we try to do is we try to match our clients to our customers to buyers of their products in other places. So three-pronged approach, which is knowledge, financing, and what we call this business matching. But what we've realized, and after doing this actually the halal sector, the spectrum is quite wide, right? And different parts of the spectrum or different parts of the segment actually have a lot of requirements and so on, different requirements. The smaller guys, the smaller players and so on, the people who are selling halal goods from their homes and so on, the small vendors, actually their biggest problem is how do they get certification for a small business? The halal certification process for a very, somebody who's operating from the house, that process is beyond them, right? We actually say that, okay, we can, so they don't even get the halal certification, but we think because they are Muslims and so on, maybe say they're halal.
Okay, can we propose, Shariman, for the banks in Malaysia and beyond to collectively sponsor and finance floating factory so that they can come in and put their goods, get certification, and they can move on? Because otherwise, the thing will continue forever.
Yes.
In Malaysia, I'm talking about.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can take note that perhaps bank coming together to set up in each respective, state or perhaps municipal, a small office, a small factory for them to have a small outlet for them to be certified. Otherwise, there's no certification forever, and they have to fight the other big boys in the market.
I think that's very, because I think we are looking at the common kitchen.
Yeah.
Common certified
That's
kitchen,
right.
and everyone can use.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay. Any other panelists wanted to comment? Otherwise, we can move on to the next question. Bapak or Hans?
Well, short, we're a small country, so
Yeah.
the only example that I can give is that obviously we were confronted a few years ago with the blockade. Then suddenly Qatar realized, because they imported all the
Yeah.
food, they created their own dairy industry by
That's right.
flying in a lot of cows and create an industry that is now exporting dairy products. And that concept of self-sustainability of food security,
Yeah.
Qatar would love to export. And I think from the Sovereign Wealth Fund there is an interest to invest in halal food in general. So if there are initiatives from this part
Yeah.
of the world, please reach out.
Okay, Malaysian wake up. There's a call from Qatar to invest in our dairy products, vegetable and whatnot. This is real issue coming from that part of the world. They need a more dynamic and sophisticated and modern agriculture sector, not the old one. Very ROI driven rather than very old style of halal in the sector of vegetable and plantation and they call it the farming sector coming from the Middle East in particular. Bapak Arif?
Okay, thank you. I hope this is an example of Indonesia, will
Yeah.
be interesting. As we know that most of the halal sectors in Indonesia is on the small, medium enterprises. So one of the problems they face is about the packaging. They don't
Yes.
have enough
That's right.
investment how to make the very interesting packaging and halal and so on and so forth, and also safety and secure. So we introduce with one of the Wakaf institution and also other stakeholders to establish a halal packaging production house
Yeah.
in East Java. So we introduce this, and then these packaging houses can be used by all
Anyone.
SMEs
Yeah.
together. So this is something that very important, the role of the Islamic social finance, how they can creating something that useful for others. And then we expect we can do also in other provinces, not
Yeah,
only in
yeah.
East Java. Thank you.
I think in the issue of halal, the traceability is very important. We need to invest very much in traceability. I have one good case in Malaysia. For example, peanut from Malaysia halal, we sell to overseas market. They say one pack, RM1. Some other countries, they interception strategies. They bought our peanuts, they repack. As Bapak Arif was saying, they can sell back to the market at $4 per package. So this is the market that we are talking about. So we need to improve to help the lower income and the lower, people who are producing hard labor and effort, but lack to the factory, central kitchen, central packaging, they are losing at the end of the day. So this is very interesting issues, not only Malaysia, perhaps in Africa, in Central Asia and whatnot. Can we move on to the second one, admin? Datuk Rashid, a question to you. You wanted to take this question briefly?
Thank you, Tan Sri, for the question. I think this is very close to my heart, actually. I think in terms of moving forward, what we have done now is in terms of starting on a pilot basis. So moving forward, what we want to see is really in terms of the transformation. Right now, most banks does it on a CSR kind of value proposition. We want to see this transforming into real business proposition. That's number one. Secondly is that in terms of the measure itself. Right now, we look in terms of how much funds have we disbursed or approved. But what we want to see really in terms of the achievement, the outcome, how many people have we helped, how has we contributed towards social resilience of the society itself. And thirdly, so this is where we want to mainstream beyond the domestic borders, but towards regional and global as well. Thank you.
Any incentive and discouragement for not being able? I mean, if you wanted to respond, up to you. Otherwise, you can skip on.
Maybe not so much of incentives,
Okay.
but what we can offer is in terms of that's where we need to work together closely, and that's where we can do the linking up in terms of really linking up the industry with the state Islamic authorities, where we can try to facilitate in terms of really upskilling with regard to the offerings of social finance products.
Okay, we take it positively, Datuk. Okay. On the Islamic finance talent scarcity, perhaps not only in Malaysia but worldwide, any panelists wanted to, offer some help? Islamic finance talent scarcity? Bapak Arif?
Yes, I try to respond because this also happening in Indonesia. That's why from the beginning, Bank Indonesia also have the program with the university. So we try to, encourage them to focusing on the Islamic studies and then finance. And central bank also invite the good student, graduate from the good universities with the background of the Islamic to be part of the central bank's employee. I think that's the thing.
Bapak, if I may interject, how good the salaries are compared to the other IT guy or risk guy or credit guy in the banks? Those who have Islamic finance, whatever certificate or degree,
Yeah,
is there any premium?
very good.
Very
job.
good
Yeah,
premium.
very
Okay.
good salaries.
Because we have some problem in not only in Malaysia, worldwide. A Sharia scholar, Islamic finance qualified joining Sharia team, but they were offered by the IT team and risk team. They are getting higher salary, so they move on to the other circle of the industry. So perhaps we need to address that issue. Heng wanted to address?
So again, we're a small country. We have only 350,000 Qataris, so we are dependent on expats. We have a good education sector. We even have our own finance and business academy, and we invite students also from this part of the world to come to our Islamic institutions. And what I've seen in real life is that people that graduate from these schools, they get great job opportunities in the financial sector in Qatar. So any young graduates here, please come to Qatar and give them, we need your talent.
Yeah. Thank you, Hen. Ahmad Shariman?
Just a quick point. I think I would say that, but things are also changing very fast. If pure knowledge of Islamic finance alone is no longer enough, because if you what I said earlier, I think we need people with combined knowledge. And I think what we're trying to do now is actually to do the reverse. We actually try to recruit people from other fields, and maybe not even banking or economics field. It could be people with background in psychology or environmental science and so on. And then we convert them to Islamic bankers rather than the other way around. Because I think the needs of the institutions are also changing.
Yeah, just to add to what has been said earlier on, I think in Malaysia, we have benefited from the very comprehensive and complete talent development ecosystem, because we have training program provided from the board, at the board level, at the Sharia level, at the executive level as well. So basically, I think we have a very comprehensive training program. But what is more important now is that as we move forward, given the complexity of the Islamic finance industry as we move forward, and we talk about sustainability and many others, so that's where how do we create a talent that will have a new mindset in terms of really taking through the next level of Islamic finance ecosystem. I think that's very critical. So that's where I think we need to really look in terms of how best do we do it and how best do we leverage on institutions that we have right now to provide this kind of training to prepare the mindset for the future.
I think my personal question to all the panelists, the answer is yes and no, okay? No other option given to you. Do you think that we should pay more to anyone among the practitioners who have been going out over weekend, using their own money to enroll into whatever program recognized by the respective institution, to give them a bit of incentive? Yes or no? DJ?
I would rather move away from incentive driven because
Okay.
I believe that I think investment in talent is something a very valuable business value proposition actually because it brings a lot of benefits for the future.
Thank you. Shariman?
Yes.
Okay. Hang?
Yeah, I think you should.
No obligation though. Papa Arif?
I think similar with Heng. You
Okay.
should.
Thank you very much. So okay, move on to the next question on top of the list, again for Central Bank, Dato' DG, on the risk sharing or risk bearing vis-a-vis risk transfer.
I'll be very quick on this. I think so this is where we are pushing forward as well. Because if you look in terms of the diversity of Sharia contracts, it provides for numerous kind of approach in terms of providing financing. So that's why we like to see more of risk-bearing kind of like products coming out. And one example that we're also seeing here is also in terms of, for example, even IAT card. A very good example. So that's why you have a blended finance in terms of from Zakat and from the microfinance and also in terms of holding hands with regard to their development. So this is where we work on a partnership basis, not only in terms of bearing some parts of the risk, but also in terms of being responsible to develop the particular entrepreneur or businesses.
Okay, we hope that we can do a lot more in the future because this is also what the Central Bank, in particular, Securities Commission as well, to really push for sukuk based on equity risk sharing, what have you, and the banking product as well. Perhaps we can take the last question. But before that, let me tackle the issue on the packaging. It does not, warrant to have halal packaging per se. Packaging is packaging, but the quality of it, the design, the branding, the design. I mean, to make it to add value, because otherwise, halal product with bad packaging will drop and dilute the value of halal product. So we need to put more vibrancy to it. This is the whole meaning of halal packaging. Packaging of halal product to make it more of premium in nature rather than to be sensitive over the quality of over the material of packaging. We don't mean that, we mean the quality of packaging at the end of the day to add value. Instead of getting margin of 10%, we have to put to 30%, 40% of each product that we are selling to the open market. Okay, the last one. Perhaps I like the cost one. How to make Islamic bank financing low cost so that we will not burdening the customer. How can we achieve a very effective, marginal, low cost of financing, if possible? Anyone? Okay, everyone look at you, Shariman.
I knew it. Okay, there's two parts to it. First of all, I try to remind people as much as possible that Islamic banks are only one part of the Islamic financial ecosystem, right? But because it's the most successful, and I think in Malaysia, we have to give credit to the central bank, Bank Negara, for really supporting it. So everyone try to put a lot of work, not say work, but there's a lot of expectation being put on Islamic banks, but the reality is we are one part of the more comprehensive ecosystem. Now, the second point on this, I think what we are looking at, and within the limits of what we are permitted to do, I mean, without going to details how we operate and how we are funded and so on, remember on the other side, we have depositors as well, people who have put money in the banks, and our obligations are also to the other side of the coin, which is depositors, right? We are not, so, and some of them might be equity based if they follow investment account, but majority of them are depositors. Now, on this piece, I think things that we are exploring is actually relates to blended finance. So whereby we actually try to incorporate either wakaf money, not wakaf, zakat money, whereby in trying to help give financing to the poor, to the asnaf and whatnot, we try to reduce that cost, or even at zero cost, and that is actually covered using zakat money, right? So that's among the blended finance approach that we are doing. Other approaches that we are trying to do and we are exploring is also to say we get depositors who are philanthropic, meaning they say that I am willing to forego my return on my money that I invest with the bank if I'm doing investment account, or if I put deposit in the bank, I'm willing to forego the return if you channel this money for specific purposes, right? Again, we are an intermediary, right? Islamic banks are just an intermediary, right? So our ability to reduce and so on will also depend on where we are sourcing the funds. The money is not magic. It comes from somewhere, there's cost to it, and we are working out to figure out and so on. But again, I go back to my first point, we are also not the only, by right, there should be other organizations as well out there, because we are not the only players in the spectrum.
Thank you. I know it's very difficult and hard question to you. It is the collective responsibility of everyone to come out with a new algorithm theory to really press the cost as low as possible to help the lower income society in the market. Those who are looking into shelter, employment, food on the table and whatnot. So we have to come together, the Majlis Agama Islam, Islamic Religious Council, the JLCs, the banks of the industry, and everyone, the philanthropists. Otherwise, we are still fighting the old battle without any light at the end of the tunnel. So this is what message of Shariman just now. Let us put the effort together to make it happen. Before we come to the end of the session, I would like to give 1 minute each to the esteemed panelists to really sum up what do they really want to see in the next 3 months to 6 months from now in terms of effecting a very resilient and efficient financial system. What would be the magic word, if any, that they wanted to share with us that can ignite and provide the push and the catalyst for the industry to move forward? It could be a wish list, it could be a very practical idea, but it's up to them, their own creativity. 1 word or 2 words, if any, to really share with the audience. May I start with Bapa Arif from the end of the...
If only 1 word will be jama'ah, so doing together.
Collectivism. Thank you.
A few more words. We would like to start copying what you guys did in Malaysia. So the first corporate sukuk, I hope, will happen in the next 6 months. And then a comment on the last thing. I think we should make remittance of money back home for the workers. We should make it without any cost. And I think that is possible. Technically, it doesn't cost anything. It's just the mindset of the banks and the money exchanges and the regulator.
So I'll say partnership at scale.
It's just one phrase perhaps. I think let's work on how best to amplify the positive impact of Islamic finance.
Thank you. Can I invite everyone to put our hand together to thank our esteemed panelists for their tremendous insight and input. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum assalam warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you to our moderator, yang berbahagia Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar, and all our esteemed speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause. And now we would like to invite Encik Abdul Aziz Abdul Jalal, the Director, Kliff 2022, to present the mementos to our speakers. Gentlemen, can you please step forward? One for the cameraman. Together. Thank you again. Now, before we take our lunch break, can we have the lucky draw? Okay, we will have these 4 books up for grabs, or one book up for grab. And when you come in at 2 o'clock sharp, you can scan the QR code and answer 3 questions. The first person to answer the 3 questions correctly, ASAP, will win one of these books. Okay? So one of these books will be up for grabs. Come in at 2 o'clock sharp, scan the QR code, answer the 3 questions correctly, and you will win the prize. So with that, I thank you all. So see you again at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Enjoy your lunch. Okay, 2:30. We're going to be in here at 2:30.